This episode is brought to you by Skillshare. I took this time lapse of the night sky from my front yard a few years ago, and I've always wanted to do something with it. This is a story about that. I created an image stack of all the frames from the time lapse to show the star trails, and I made some prints from it. I wanted to make a frame for it, but I wanted it to be a little different. I found a stick of quarter-stawn cherry in my stacks and took it to the jointer to get a straight edge. Then ripped the other edge at the table saw. There were still a few mill marks on it, so I ran it through the planer. Then it was time to cut the rabbet that would house the glass print and back. There are many ways to cut a rabbet or rebate if you're from across the pond. Router, jointer, plane. But if you use the table saw like me, be sure to always put the waste side of the rabbet to the outside of the blade. In my woodworking youth, I was instructed poorly and almost was impaled as the waste against the fence came shooting back like a spear. That's my PSA. With my rabbet cut, I took it to the miter saw, numbering each piece as I went to keep track of grain continuity. I measure from the rabbet in the board and cut an 1/8 inch over the size of my print to make sure that I don't have to trim my print. Then I headed back to the bench. I laid out my numbered pieces sequentially and used some blue tape as a temporary clamp for assembly. I put some glue in the joints and folded it up. I like to use bar and pipe clamps for the actual clamping pressure. They can help fudge any gaps in the miters, and you can persuade a frame if for some reason it is out of square. And while the glue is drying, let me tell you about the sponsor of this video, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online community with thousands of classes covering dozens of creative and entrepreneurial skills, creative writing to marketing, productivity, and more. Premium membership gives you unlimited access to high-quality classes from experts working in their fields to help you gain new skills and live your best life. I have been a professional photographer for the last 15 years, and people tell me I'm pretty good at it. You can take courses on astrophotography and night photography to achieve shots like this one, which I will be framing, but what I'm not great at is branding and brand identity. I've been taking a course from Kate Ahrens on making a more cohesive brand in the William Walker Company to raise my value and help my company provide more for my family. Skillshare is also incredibly affordable. An annual subscription is less than $10 a month. Click the link in the description to get a 2-month free trial of Skillshare Premium. Miter joints like this aren't the strongest mainly because of end grain to end grain glue surfaces, so they needed a little reinforcement. I've done plenty of saw kerf cut keys, sometimes misrepresented as splines, which also reinforce the joint but is a different technique. I have also been guilty of this mistake, so no judgment, just informing. But this time I wanted to make some dovetailed keyed miters. So I installed a dovetail bit in my router table and set up my miter key sled, not a spline jig, and cut a piece of scrap. With my sled set up, it was time for the real thing. I slid each corner over the spinning bit to create the socket portion of the dovetail through the miter. With the sockets cut, I needed to make the tails, so to speak. I grabbed a piece of scrap maple and cut it close to the size of the widest part of the socket and went back to the router table. This time I padded out the fence to bury the bit so just one side of the cutting edge protruded and ran the piece against the fence, sneaking up on my cut until I had a snug fit. I trimmed off the excess depth at the bandsaw, then laid out a few keys and cut them with a handsaw. I installed the keys with glue and added a few clamps to close up any gaps that might have otherwise been there. After the glue dried, I trimmed them flush with a handsaw and started the finishing process. I sanded up to 220 grit, and if you missed the video on this Mercaderos, this thing almost makes sanding not suck. I finished the frame with some Danish oil. I love the grain continuity and contrast of the cherry frame and maple keys, and it's only going to get better with age as the cherry darkens. I added some hanging hardware on the back, installed a sheet of Lexan in lieu of glass, and added my print. I secured the luan back with these picture points and called this one done. If you are interested in this limited edition framed print to support the channel, I'll be auctioning this one off on my Instagram, so if you're not already following me, head over there for more details on the auction. Let me know what you guys think of this project in the comments. Be sure to subscribe if you aren't already, and as always, thanks for watching.